Charles Darwin enjoys a near godlike status among scientists for his theory of evolution. But his ideas that animals are conscious in the same way humans are have long been shunned. Until now. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals in their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness, and misery, Darwin wrote. But his idea that animals think and feel was seen by many as scientific heresy among many, if not most animal behavior experts. Attributing consciousness to animals based on their responses was seen as a cardinal sin. The argument went that projecting human traits, feelings, and behaviors onto animals had no scientific basis and there was no way of testing what goes on in animals' minds. But if new evidence emerges of animals' abilities to feel and process what is going on around them, could that mean they are, in fact, conscious? We now know that bees can count, recognize human faces and learn how to use tools. Professor Lars Chitka of Queen Mary University of London has worked on many of the major studies of bee intelligence. If bees are that intelligent, maybe they can think and feel something, which are the building blocks of consciousness, he says. Professor Chitka's experiments showed that bees would modify their behavior following a traumatic incident and seem to be able to play, rolling small wooden balls, which he says they appeared to enjoy as an activity. These results have persuaded one of the most influential and respected scientists in animal research to make this strong, stark and contentious statement: given all the evidence that is on the table, it is quite likely that bees are conscious, he said. It isn't just bees. Many say that it is now time to think again, with the emergence of new evidence they say marks a sea change in thinking on the science of animal consciousness. They include Professor Jonathan Birch of the London School of Economics. We have researchers from different fields starting to dare to ask questions about animal consciousness and explicitly think about how their research might be relevant to those questions, says Professor Birch. Some are very critical of some uses of the word consciousness. The field is replete with weasel words and unfortunately one of those is consciousness, says Professor Stephen Harnett of Quebec University. It is a word that is confidently used by a lot of people, but they all mean something different, and so it is not clear at all what it means. He says that a better, less weaselly, word is sentience, which is more tightly defined as the capacity to feel. To feel everything, a pinch, to see the color red, to feel tired and hungry, those are all things you feel, says Professor Harnett. Others who have been instinctively skeptical of the idea of animals being conscious say that the new broader interpretation of what it means to be conscious makes a difference. Dr. Monique Udall, from Oregon State University, says she comes from a behaviorist background. If we look at distinct behaviors, for example what species can recognize themselves in a mirror, how many can plan ahead or are able to remember things that happened in the past, we are able to test these questions with experimentation and observation and draw more accurate conclusions based on data, she says. And if we are going to define consciousness as a sum of measurable behaviors, then animals that have succeeded in these particular tasks can be said to have something that we choose to call consciousness. This is a much narrower definition of consciousness than the new group is promoting, but a respectful clash of ideas is what science is all about, according to Dr. Udall. Having people who take ideas with a grain of salt and cast a critical eye is important because if we don't come at these questions in different ways, then it is going to be harder to progress. But what next? Some say far more animals need to be studied for the possibility of consciousness than is currently the case. Right now, most of the science is done on humans and monkeys and we are making the job much harder than it needs to be because we are not learning about consciousness in its most basic form, says Prof Andrews, a professor of philosophy specializing in animal minds at York University in Toronto. Professor Andrews and many others believe that research on humans and monkeys is the study of higher-level consciousness, exhibited in the ability to communicate and feel complex emotions, whereas an octopus or snake may also have a more basic level of consciousness that we are ignoring by not investigating it. Professor Andrews was among the prime movers of the New York Declaration on Animal Consciousness signed earlier this year, which has so far been signed by 286 researchers. The short 4-paragraph declaration states that it is irresponsible to ignore the possibility of animal consciousness. We should consider welfare risks and use the evidence to inform our responses to these risks, it says. Chris McGee is from Understanding Animal Research, a UK body backed by research organisations and companies that undertake animal experiments. He says animals already are assumed to be conscious when it comes to whether to conduct experiments on them, and says UK regulations require that experiments should be conducted only if the benefits to medical research outweigh the suffering caused. There is enough evidence for us to have a precautionary approach, he says. But there is also a lot we don't know, including about decapod crustaceans such as crabs, lobsters, crayfish, and shrimp. We don't know very much about their lived experience, or even basic things like the point at which they die. And this is important because we need to set rules to protect them either in the lab or in the wild. A government review led by Professor Birch in 2021 assessed 300 scientific studies on the sentience of decapods and cephalopods, which include octopus, squid, and cuttlefish. Professor Birch's team found that there was strong evidence that these creatures were sentient in that they could experience feelings of pain, pleasure, thirst, hunger, warmth, joy, comfort, and excitement. The conclusions led to the government including these creatures into its Animal Welfare, Sentience, Act in 2022. Issues related to octopus and crab welfare have been neglected, says Professor Birch. The emerging science should encourage society to take these issues a bit more seriously. There are millions of different types of animals and precious little research has been carried out on how they experience the world. We know a bit about bees, and other researchers have shown indications of conscious behavior in cockroaches and even fruit flies, but there are so many other experiments to be done involving so many other animals. It is a field of study that the modern-day heretics who have signed the New York Declaration claim has been neglected, even ridiculed. Their approach, to say the unsayable and risk sanction, is nothing new. Around the same time that René Descartes was saying, "I think therefore I am," the Catholic Church found the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei vehemently suspect of heresy for suggesting that the Earth was not the center of the universe. It was a shift in thinking that opened our eyes to a truer, richer picture of the universe and our place in it. Shifting ourselves from the center of the universe a second time may well do the same for our understanding of ourselves as well as the other living things with whom we share the planet.